Okay, Year 12, I just want to quickly introduce you to the Mod C unit. So I'm just going to quickly do a screen recording to take us through the first part of our booklets. You should have been able to access those booklets via either OneNote or our Teams class page. So obviously we have got, just let me scroll through down to our rubric. This is obviously what Nessa gives us for an overview to your Module C studies. Underneath that, I'll just scroll down a little bit further. We have got a bit of a breakdown of what this rubric is. All right. So really important to understand right from the outset of Mod C is that it's all about you improving your writing. So it's not so much your analytical writing, though that still sort of has some foundational aspects here. The emphasis far more is upon your creative writing. So really what you've got to think about in the Mod C unit is focus upon how you are developing as a writer. So it's the whole purpose of the Mod C is about making you a better writer. That's the focus. What's really important to understand is that writing is a craft. And what that means is if you think about, for example, if you're a musician or maybe you're a sports person, those skills aren't just things that we can naturally do necessarily. Even if we have a natural ability in those things, we still have to work and improve our craft of those skills. So what that means is, for example, if you're a soccer player, you still have to go to training, even if you're a professional. And you still keep kicking the ball and doing those drills over and over again to get better. And then it's the same, obviously, if you're a musician. You might be a really talented, natural musician. You might be able to pick up different instruments and play quite beautifully. But it's still something that to get better at, you have to keep practicing. And there's hours and hours of things like scales on a piano rather, and just all these elements that you've got to keep working at. So what I want you to think about is that Mod C is a little bit like that. It's about exercising your writing muscles and keeping practicing your writing over time to hopefully get better through this process. What you've got here is, again, a bit further of an unpacking of the module rubric. These are all really important elements, and I'm just going to quickly go through them as an overview. You can read them more closely, but it just gives you a taste of what this module is all about. As I've said, it's about extending and improving your own skills and confidence as a writer. If you can have that mindset right from the outset, that makes your journey through this module far better. You're writing for a range of audiences and purposes. That means each time you're writing for Mod C, things will change. So you are crafting all the time in response to different ideas and different stimulus. And hopefully through the journey of Mod C, you actually get better at it. The more times you're practicing this skill, we would hope that you're improving as you develop. So that's the whole purpose of the Mod C writing. Jumping to rubric statement 3 here. Very importantly, it's about examining some prescribed texts. So Nessa mandates that we study at least 2 Mod C prescribed texts. We actually teach 3, and you can teach as many as you want. The purpose of the prescribed text here is a little bit different to your other modules. In your other modules, you've got to have a really close analytical understanding of those texts. Here, rather, you're looking at them as examples of great writing. And each of these texts has been chosen by Nessa for that purpose. They are writers who are accomplished in their writing. And what you're required to do with these Mod C prescribed texts is use them to improve your own writing. So you're kind of borrowing from them. You're kind of mimicking elements of those texts to ultimately improve your writing. And students who do that process really do improve their writing over time. Sorry, I just jumped a bit far. Rubric point 4, again, emphasis here is upon looking at language creatively and imaginatively, and how language, everything in senior English is about language. Actually, everything in high school English, right from juniors, is about the emphasis upon language. But here you're looking at it how language is being used creatively and imaginatively. Now, lots of students hate it for that reason, because they're not naturally creative individuals, or they're not easily imaginative, particularly in our contemporary world. Our imaginations seem to have kind of evaporated a little with the screens. So here what you're looking at is the way that language can be used to evoke emotion in a responder. How can you make me feel something when I'm reading or writing? It can be used to describe some elements of the natural world, and that's really quite beautiful. Being able to position me within a natural landscape through your language and making me experience that. Sharing a perspective, or shaping a perspective rather, and sharing an aesthetic vision. So that's all the way you're using your writing for a purpose and a reason. And that's a really important element in Mod C, listening to the storm around us. Rubric point 5 here, you're looking at the enduring quality of texts. And these are obviously texts that have been chosen for a reason by Nessa. They've accomplished, and lots of them are quite longevity in terms of their appeal and the reason that they've got these universal notions perhaps and this impact of language. So again, you're looking at why these are good examples of good writing and how you can use them to make your own writing better. Here, rubric point 6, and as I said, I'm just going to jump through them really quickly so that you've got a kind of overview before we get into the texts. It's about here looking at the process of writing, all right? And as it says in the explanation there on the screen, it's not a static process writing, and unfortunately as students, sometimes you think you should just be able to sit down and write and something brilliant come about. For most writers, even professional writers, that's definitely not the case. I've got some friends who are professional writers. It's a really tough gig, and they often spend years of their lives investing in a piece of writing. And they love their writing for that purpose. It's so much who they are, and they pour so much of themselves and the hours of their life into crafting it. Now, what that should give you an understanding of is how it's this kind of cyclical process that you continue to evolve and work within as you're writing for Mod C. So you've got to plan a piece of writing. You've got to think about what you're wanting to write and how you're wanting to express that. And then you've got to write it. And then you've got to edit it, because often it's as we edit that we go, oh, that doesn't really work, or I need to change that because that moment in the text or that moment in my writing kind of is a bit nothing. So you want to make sure there's a real richness to your writing, and that comes through this process. And students who engage in that process really produce some excellent pieces of writing Year 12, I can guarantee you. Just down here, as out of interest, some of these great writers, particularly some that you're probably familiar with, I would imagine, J.K. Rowling, who's the Harry Potter author, they themselves acknowledge that they've actually adopted a process of writing where they've taken from other great pieces of writing. So sometimes this notion of fan fiction, where you're actually just looking at another text and continuing it or reimagining it or adapting it further or adding more to it, that's part of this process for Module C as well, and you might be asked to do that in your exam. 7.7 here, it's about generating and exploring various concepts, and part of that process is through discussion and your own thinking, your speculation, and it's a structure, all right? I know, having taught this now a few times through with my Year 12 students, the students who do best with Module C are the ones who really engage in that process of the structure and the evolving nature of their writing. Now, I've spent many hours working on a singular piece of writing with a Year 12 student, which I love doing, and they've then scrapped that piece of writing. They've abandoned it. And I don't go, what? What are you doing? That's a waste of my time. I see that as part of an investment in your journey as a writer. And through that process, some students have actually produced quite amazing pieces of writing, both at an advanced level and standard students. I'm really proud this year of some of my standard students in what they've created through their Module C writing. Further, rubric point 8 here, again, it's this understanding of the process, the drafting, the revising, experimenting. It's all about experimenting. Sometimes experiments work and sometimes they fail. And that's part of the beauty of Mod C. You've got to see the validity in this process. And you're experimenting with different elements of language, rhetorical features, figurative language, that's that non-literal language, linguistic devices, which is all about the power and the way that language is put together. And you've got an example of a listed examples here by Nessa. So they're wanting you to focus on some of these particular elements as advanced students. Allusion, we've talked extensively about allusions all through Year 11, and that's reference to other texts or other historical events or other social elements that you're dropping into your writing that really show some sophistication. Auden, when we studied Auden's poetry last term, he uses extensive allusions, and it's because he's so clever. He doesn't need to unpack all the details. He just lets us sit on those examples. Obviously, imagery, we've talked also about the importance of imagery, engaging a reader through imagery. Narrative voice, which is such an important element in Mod C writing. Characterisation, you'll see there's a lot of imaginative components here. And tone, the mood and the feeling that pervades your writing. Be really conscious of that. And so often we overlook the power of tone. Humans are emotional beings and we often respond through our emotions. So really think about that. Focus on a purpose in your writing. Why are you writing this piece of writing? Not just because you're a HSC students and Mrs. Reed says you've got to do a Mod C task. There's got to be a greater richness to your purpose than that. Think about why you want to write this. Very important elements. Very quickly, editing. There should be no errors with things like your sentence structure and your spelling and your punctuation. Nessa wants to see what you've come to understand as a Year 12 student through your whole school journey about these elements. And it's like I say to my classes, if you send off a piece of writing to a publishing company, you don't want it to be filled with mistakes. They're going to send it back and say, this is rubbish. You want it to be a really great example of writing, and that's obviously the focus here. Rubric point 10 here, you're working independently and there will be opportunities for collaboration. So it's really important, as I said, to share with your teacher, but also to share with other students, your families even. Get them to read some of your writing and give you some feedback. That process will make you a better writer, and that's what you want here for Mod C. Some important styles, we've talked about these in Year 11, but the emphasis here is upon producing particular styles of writing, and the ones listed here are the ones that Nessa wants us to focus on in Mod C. Imaginative, they are creative texts. They're not only narrative texts. Lots of students write narrative texts for imaginative, but it doesn't have to be a narrative, and we'll talk about that more as we start to get into Mod C. Discursive, again, we've talked about discursive writing in Year 11, but it's really that discussion, that exploration of an idea or a topic just for the purpose of exploring it, not for giving an opinion or, trying to persuade me to agree. Persuasive obviously has that greater focus upon making your responder agree with a particular perspective or an action that you want them to do perhaps. And then informative. Informative isn't as prominent in Mod C, but still listed there as something you want to focus on in your Mod C writing. What I want you to do now, before I just stop this little intro and overview of the rubric, have a quick go at personally reflecting here to some of the elements that I've gone through. Don't read back over them. Just try to recall some of the major elements here that we've talked about in light of this module. Just note them down. That's all I want you to do. It's all I want you to focus on. We'll come back to this, but it's just an introduction to get you understanding the purpose of this module. Okay?